Am I live? Hello, Glenn. Hi, John. What's up, dudes? Oh, yes, I forgot you had a toothache and an earache. I had since Friday. Keeps improving. That's good news. Question. Am I clear? Is the picture quality clear? I'm going to check it too. I had, ooh, yay. Okay. Hopefully everyone's good. Looks like we had some health issues going on. Oh my goodness. Everyone's okay now. That's good. Do you get good medicine? Okay, cool. That's very exciting. And I'm just checking on myself. Give me 1 second. Hi, Big Caesar. Hello. Okay, good. My StreamYard logo is gone. I upgraded. Oh, yeah, they gave me all the drugs. Good news. At least that's the good part about recovering. You get the good drugs and you get to just kind of stay home and chill. I had the only major thing, it wasn't a major thing, but the biggest thing I ever had done was getting my wisdom teeth out. And I love being sick because I'm always doing something and I feel guilty if I don't do anything. So if I'm a little sick, obviously not too sick, but if I'm a little bit sick, it's like, okay, now I have an excuse to just relax. I'm becoming more professional. It's way more fun to be able to share videos and stuff with you all while I'm doing a live. And I'll be live again tonight at 8 p.m. if you want to join again. I don't know what we're going to talk about yet, but it'll be fun. I think we can go ahead and get started. It looks like we have enough people. Hi, Lance. Praying you get well soon. Absolutely, Lance. Hopefully you get well soon. Surgery equals laziness and snacks. Okay. All right. So yesterday we were talking about good morning, Sarah, or afternoon for you. Yeah, it's the afternoon here. Good afternoon. Yesterday we were talking about Candace Owens exposing BLM. So if you don't know the whole story, Candace Owens is working on a documentary exposing Black Lives Matter global organization. I'm sure you all heard. What the F did you inhale helium? No, I didn't. Candace Owens is working on a documentary exposing BLM. As we know, they've had some questions regarding their funding. Awesome video. Have you unalived those geese? What's important? Okay, first of all, update on the geese. There are now 12 geese. Yesterday there were 10. Today there are 12. I will try to find them. Ruh-roh, we already have a troll. Oh, it's fine. Cool, 8 p.m. We'll try to be, it'll be 8 p.m. Eastern time. So the 10 geese turned into 12 today. We started out with 2 geese hanging out in the front yard, and then it went to 12 geese. No, then it went to 10 geese. Now it's 12 geese. And I don't have video of them because they weren't outside when I went outside earlier, but hopefully I can check and get video of them later. Let them have their money. No different than dump raising money. Run them off, girl. You'll have 100 before long. I'm not really opposed to having 100 geese. That's probably not a good thing. I kind of just want to let it play out. Anywho, so Black Lives Matter global organization raised about $90 million. A few million of that is accounted for, or so they say. It was given to charities and things like that. And the thing about BLM is they raise this money off the backs of individuals who never saw a dime of any of that money. Breonna Taylor's mom, several other parents of the individuals who they raise money for have spoken out against BLM, calling them a fraudulent organization. So a lot of investigations have been going on for the money that they raised. There's $66 million that are unaccounted for. Several states, they are not even allowed to collect donations anymore. In Washington state, they're not allowed to collect donations. In California, they're not allowed to collect donations and they're being investigated. So there's a lot of questions happening. And we found out that several mansions were bought, one for 6 million, another for 3 million. Patrice Colors, one of the co-founders, who eventually resigned, went on a mansion shopping spree. So there's a lot of questions as to where this money went. We do know, for instance, that Black Lives Matter organization did buy a $6 million mansion where they were supposed to film videos. That's what they said it was for. Patrice Colors recently came out and said, let LOL talk about oppressing a movement you don't agree with. LOL. No, the whole movement was based on a lie, and it's the people that run it are quite fraudulent. It's not. So first of all, Black Lives Matter started back in Ferguson, and I thought it was a fraud from day one. If you want to help individuals, you wouldn't tell them that all police are bad. If you want to help individuals, you will teach them to comply with an officer. You're not going to riot in neighborhoods. You're not going to burn down buildings. You're not going to say Black Lives Matter while simultaneously burning Black businesses down. There's also a little girl named Sequoia Turner who is 8 years old who was killed in a Black Lives Matter protest, and not one time did they speak out against her. Anyway, so long story short, we all know this. We've talked about this a million times before. Candace Owens is working on a documentary, finding out where the funding went. And for that documentary, she went to Patrice Colors' home, one of her homes, one of her mansions, and knocked on the door. Keep in mind, Candace is very pregnant. Just knocked on the door, not even the front door. There's a gate. So it was a gate where she was met by a security guard who happens to be a white security guard. So she never actually interacted with Patrice Colors. She showed up at noon, just said, hey, I have some questions to ask Patrice. Could I talk to her? They said no. And then Patrice Colors released a video, and I'm actually going to show you some of this video because I think it's really important. So this is Patrice after Candace just went to her home. She was at the outside gate, wasn't even at the front door. She was met by a security guard, and this is what Patrice
That may next time be bearing arms. That may next time be more violent.
To Candace.
This is unacceptable.
Let me pull it up for you.
Black people should be able to fight for our rights, for our right to live without being harassed, without being pay attention to what's happening. Because what happened to me today has the potential to open up the floodgates of many other right-wing people that may next time be bearing arms, that may next time be more violent.
Okay, so keep in mind, she is discussing Candace Owens showing up pregnant to her home, just speaking to one of her security guards, asking if she can talk to Patrice Colors. Also, keep in mind that all of this is on video. So she had, like, I think 2 cameramen with her, and that was it.
This is unacceptable. Black people should be able to fight for our rights, for our right to live without being harassed, without being without fearing for our lives, without having people, strangers, show up to our private and personal property.
Without having strangers show up to our private and personal property. Do you know how many homes over the summer of 2021 or 2020? Do you know how many homes protesters showed up to, private residential homes, screaming BLM? And not one time did this organization call that out. Not one time did they condemn any of that.
I really need my family to be safe. I need to be safe. I need my child to be safe. And what happened this morning is not safety.
She is talking about one very pregnant Candace Owens coming to her house, not even at the door, at a gate. And by the way, Patrice never interacted with Candace Owens. She watched a security video. A very pregnant woman comes and wants to ask you a question.
It's not what I deserve. It's not what any of us deserve.
So she's saying we don't deserve to feel unsafe. How about all of the people that felt unsafe because all of the violent rioting that happened? How about the almost 24 people that lost their lives at the hand of other rioters during the BLM riots that you encouraged?
So just be diligent when you see shit in the media and you see shit that's being talked about. Please be diligent because they are purposefully doing this. They are purposefully.
What you are seeing right now.
Okay, so this is Candace reacting to this video. That wasn't even the whole video. The whole video was a lot longer.
Is the face of a woman who is pretending she's afraid of right-wing pundits, when in reality, she's being exposed as a fraud who took millions, used the faces of Black people, took millions of dollars to fund herself, to fund her lifestyle, to fund her girlfriend, and to buy $1 million mansions in neighborhoods where no Black people live. So, Patrice, this footage this story that we're covering is a significant one. I have always been interested in the fraud that is Black Lives Matter, your fake tears, your crocodile tears about someone politely ringing your gate and speaking to your white security guard and asking if there was anyone that I could talk to because I was covering the story. Not really going to cut it, Patrice. This is only going to commit me further.
So I do think she's scared. I do think she's terrified. I think she knows that she is about to get exposed, and people are onto them. People have been onto them for some time now. Defund BLM. Anyone else tear Dreamweaver when they see Candace? And I will say this about Candace, no matter what you think of her, she's really good at getting receipts. And I do think she's going to uncover a lot of stuff. I mean, people have been on to BLM for quite some time now, even former supporters. Only Candace can do it. Yeah, and the thing is, Candace checks all the boxes. She can't say that she just checks all the you may can scam through a nonprofit. Some of these things are going to catch up with you if you avoid paying taxes. Harassment is going to the Supreme Court justices' homes. Yeah, we'll talk about that next. But one person showing up at your gate asking if there's anyone there that can answer questions and then politely leaving is a little bit different. Thanks for muting me, Sarah. I didn't mute you. It was probably one of the moderators because you're not really saying anything of substance. You're just trying to be sort of troll-like. But I find it interesting that now we're concerned about safety. Now we're upset about going to people's homes. Yeah, I actually don't mind if he's not even on the chat anymore. I wonder if I can block Tommy. Sorry, Tommy. Bye-bye. Yeah. It's one thing if someone has actual, like, legitimate criticism, but if you're just hanging out to troll and not say anything of substance, you can go bye-bye. Whatever, I just blocked him. She didn't mute you, Tommy. I did because you're an asshole. Yeah, I hate it when people do that. Like, if you have something to say, I have a lot of people that disagree and they'll come on the chats and they actually have really good conversations. But if you're just being a jerk just to be a jerk, like, go be a jerk somewhere else. Candace is going to be her nightmare. Yeah, well, right after this happened, this is what I talked about, but literally the day after this happened, the day after Patrice did this live, the day after Candace released this little video, that's when you saw all of a sudden in the New York Post and the Daily Mail, Patrice Colors admitting that she misused some of the BLM funding. She came out and admitted it. And I think she did this because she knows she's about to be exposed. So she's trying to get ahead of the narrative a little bit. And that's where these tears are coming from, is because she knows that she's wrong. Yeah, Lance said there are several people who end up in the chat who disagree with what you say, but they're actually usually cool. I hope they stick around. Yeah, for sure. There's a huge difference between people like that and people that are just being trolls. Just, you're not even giving an argument. You're just saying things to just be dumb. So the story in the New York Post had Patrice Colors basically admitting that, yeah, we got this mansion, and yes, I threw a party for my son. I threw a birthday party for my son, and then I had an inauguration. She had an inauguration party for Joe Biden, which is quite funny because we're sitting here talking about, the Black Lives Matter movement. Joe Biden is probably one of the most problematic presidents that I can think of personally, just off the top of my head in my lifetime. He literally spoke at a he did the eulogy at a Klansman's. Why can't I think of the word right now? Funeral. Joe Biden did the eulogy at a Klansman's funeral. So there this has nothing to do with the very population that they say they care about. You're sitting here talking about, oh, the old white men, oh, the RS police officers, yet you have a white man that's guarding your home that you live in behind a gate that you bought in a white neighborhood. And then you're cheering on probably one of the most problematic presidents that I can think of in my lifetime. Whose eulogy did he speak at? Was it Robert Byrd? Is that his name? Or who did he give a eulogy to? Robert Byrd. So it's just all baloney. And for you to say, and by the way, they are self-admitted Marxists. They admitted that they had a political agenda from the very beginning. Alabama Senator? Yeah, I think so. Alabama Senator Robert Byrd. So Joe Biden gave his eulogy. Not to mention all of the other problematic things that Joe Biden has said, and the fact that Democrats just in general have done nothing for the very communities that they say they represent, the very communities that they use as political pawns. Bill Clinton mentor, Grand Dragon, Robert Byrd. Interesting. I didn't know that, Keith. So that's Patrisse Khan Colors. I will be really excited to see this documentary when it comes out, to see what it unveils. There's another guy by the name of Ami Horowitz who really went into depth into the Los Angeles BLM chapter, and there you had one of the leaders basically admit that they were outright abolitionists, that they want to abolish the criminal justice system, that they want to abolish police departments, which again is quite interesting when you live behind a gate and have a security guard at your home. You have a security detail at your home, but you want to abolish police for everyone else. But there we go. I think she knows that she's busted. I think she knows that people are onto her. Even before Candace Owens started this, people were already on to BLM and suspicious of them. How about pull-ups? What? Speaking of protesting outside of people's homes, that's what's happening all over the U.S., and it's really funny that Patrisse Khan Colors is upset that pregnant Candace knocked on her gate and spoke to her security guard and politely left. But no one speaks out about this. So this is actually Justice Alito in Virginia, and a lot of people are really critical right now of Glenn Youngkin because of this, because apparently mass protesters in black try to hide their identities as they participate in the direct action to protest Justice Alito at his family home. By the way, I believe he's been moved out of his home. He's not staying there. So he's at an undisclosed location at the moment. But this is what the protesters are doing. And this is always really suspicious as well. Look how many of them are covering their faces. Like, why do you need to do that? If you are going out and peacefully protesting, why are you covering your face? But this is in his neighborhood, in a residential neighborhood. They're actually saying my body, my voice. My body, my voice. My body, my voice. My body. Biden once said, I don't want my kids living in a racial jungle. Yeah, he said a lot of very weird things. My address, my business. Apparently not. Yeah, except for a man. I think they were actually saying my body, my voice. But a lot of people were slamming Glenn Youngkin. So this is what happened. Keep in mind, Glenn Youngkin is the Republican governor that was just recently elected in Virginia. A lot of people really liked him because he spoke out against CRT and stuff like that. And so this is from the Post Millennial. Pro-abortion activists took to the street outside of the home of Supreme Court Justice Samuel Alito on Monday night to protest the draft decision that was leaked last week. We all know that. Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin allowed the protest, chanting, and disruption to continue, saying that he was monitoring the situation. Activists chanted, Alito is a coward, abort the court. In response to this threatening behavior, Youngkin, who ran on a platform of getting tough on crime, was soft on the protesters. While running for office, ensuring safe neighborhoods was at the forefront of Youngkin's mind, and he stated that he wanted Virginia to be the best place to live, work, and raise a family. Ensuring safe neighborhoods is the first step in making Virginia the best place to live, work, and raise a family. I am honored to receive the endorsement of 50 sheriffs from around the Commonwealth. Let's go. This was Glenn Youngkin back in August 17th, 2021. For doing nothing other than monitoring the situation and for not clearing the activists before the justice's home, Youngkin, who came into office on a red wave in November, was roundly mocked. So apparently, I think I can bring it up for you in just a second, but this is actually illegal, protesting in front of someone's house. So if you really wanted to crack down on the law, you could have. And this is why a lot of people are critical of this at the moment. For doing nothing, Antifa just crossed into a Republican lead state and were allowed to target Alito's home. Glenn Youngkin did nothing. That was Jack Posobiec. Will Chamberlain suggested that simply that jail could put an end to these protests in front of the justice's home. You know what would stop the leftists from protesting at people's private homes and intimidating their families? Jail. Others posted the law, which clearly states that it is a crime, albeit a misdemeanor, to disrupt the peace outside of another's home. I stand corrected. Looks like Glenn Youngkin could have ordered that state police arrest, but chose not to, said one Twitter user. The comments on Youngkin's post about monitoring the protests repeatedly brought up the fact that there is a law in place in Virginia that could quell the protests threatening a justice at his home, if only Youngkin had seen to enforce it. This activity is expressly prohibited by federal law, violent or not. It is a direct attempt to influence one of the most senior judges in America, and you let it happen. Shame on you, said one Twitter user. Police were present, but despite there being laws against threatening judges, as well as against picketing outside a private home to either disrupt or threaten to disrupt any individual's right to tranquility in his home, Youngkin allowed the protest to proceed. The protest itself without evidence, without violence, is illegal. What level of illegality is okay for you before moving the monitoring or intimidating to stepping in? Florida Press Secretary Christina Pushaw was curious to know if a permit had been issued for the protest in that location. Did they permit a protest in this location? So remember, if you have a mass protest like that, you are required to get a permit. So I don't know. Let me know what you guys think. I am all for people cracking down on these things early on because I think they go out of hand really easily. And if you set the precedent early on, then people know what that is. But if you let it go too long, that's where things could turn violent. That's where things could take a turn for the worse. And especially when all these protesters are showing up. The video is a little bit small. But if you look at them, a lot of them have their faces completely covered, which is what Antifa typically do. And they do this so that they won't be recognizable on video. I don't like people going and protesting to people's homes. Now, it's interesting because we were just talking about Candace Owens going to Patrisse Cullors' home. That was for a media reason. She knocked on the door, asked if she could speak to someone. They said no. She left politely. Now you have mass amounts of people walking in a residential neighborhood, chanting whatever it is that they are chanting. 18 USC 1507 makes it illegal to picket outside a judge's residence. Picket, yeah. And this is a clear attempt to intimidate, like the post-millennial just said, one of the most powerful men in the Supreme Court, who, by the way, had to be moved from his home. Yeah, and TNN said, did Candace reveal her address online? I don't think so. No, she didn't. Issue fines, a good source. Absolutely, I'm all for that too. Issue fines. Because what kind of precedent is this setting? So now it's okay to go to a Supreme Court justice's house. We'll just monitor you. And by the way, this is Glenn Youngkin. Like, they made a really good point, the post-millennial. He ran on cracking down on crime. This is what happened in every leftist city all summer long. And this is why it didn't end. You had the police departments in Portland and Seattle saying, you know, we could have shut this down. If they let us shut this down, we would have been able to shut this down, because typically it's a small group of people. It's just the same people that come back every night. If they would have been able to enforce the law, they could have shut those protests down pretty early on. They're not even protests. I'm using the wrong language. They could have shut those riots down really early on. The proper way to protest is you get your permit, you're there during the day, you do what you need to do, chant what you need to chant, stand there, whatever, and then you leave. You get your voice heard, you make your point, and then when night falls, you go home and you leave. You're right. He needs to shut this down. Yes, this could, because what you're saying, okay, they're not doing anything violent, but now we're seeing this. Now we're seeing this is the new precedent. We can go to a judge's house when there is a ruling we don't like, and we can go and protest. If you are enforcing the law that's already in place, then people know, okay, I can't go to a judge's house. There was no violence here, but in my opinion, this is setting a very dangerous precedent and showed immense weakness on Glenn Youngkin's part. And this is Virginia. This is the state that I'm in right now. Disturbing the peace. What did I read? You have a right to tranquility in your own home. So many different things are happening right here. Absolutely, it's disturbing the peace. Listen to them. And this isn't even all. This is just, what, 8 seconds?
My body, my voice. My body, my voice. My body, my voice. My body, my voice.
And the sad thing is these gatherings will get violent at some point. That's why you nip it in the butt in the very beginning. You use the law that is already in place and you enforce the law, which, by the way, is what you ran on and what you're supposed to do. Enforce it early on, prevent any violence from happening. And then what happens if a neighbor gets fed up and goes outside and starts yelling at these people, and then they start yelling back and a fight breaks out? I mean, so many different things can happen. Yes, these are men that are upset because they cannot have abortions. Men now get a say in the abortion argument because they can have babies too. Catch, fine, release. But yeah, Glenn Youngkin tweeted out that they were monitoring the situation. But this is exactly what happened in a lot of the protests where violence did break out. The police were there. They were there. They just weren't doing anything because they were told to stand down. That's what happened in Kenosha. You had the reason all of that happened. They had National Guard. They had police officers, but they were all away from where the violence was actually happening. They were all holding a line at the very end of the road. That's where Kyle was running. Afterwards, he was running to the police line. And here's Lori Lightfoot. I actually saw a tweet today from somebody that I follow, and he still thinks that he was still excusing BLM and thinking that Trump incited January 6th. He still thinks that. So they'll go on this Trump narrative, but they will turn a blind eye to all of this. So here's Lori Lightfoot in response to, Lori is a space alien. By the way, Beetlejuice was trending on Twitter, and I thought it was because I heard they were working on a new Beetlejuice movie, but it's not that Beetlejuice. It's this Beetlejuice. So this is Lori Lightfoot. To my friends in the LGBTQ plus community, the Supreme Court is coming for us next. This moment has to be a call to arms. We will not surrender our rights without a fight, a right to victory. This is the mayor of Chicago, one of the most dangerous cities. Actually, Tim Young commented under that. I kept that on there. I wanted to read his comment. The mayor of the most violent city in America is here to worry about the woke nonsense instead of people literally dying on her streets there. Yeah, how many kids get gunned down in their front yards playing? Braxton said she's a hybrid of Beetlejuice and Uncle Fester. There are actually pictures of Lori Lightfoot where she used to do her hair and she would wear a little bit of not saying you have to wear makeup to be attractive. I'm just saying she took pride in her appearance and it's very different. Very, very different. Now they're making up you're just making stuff up now. Exactly. Now they're just making up struggles. Call to arm. Yeah, and it's funny because she's very against guns, and it's interesting that she used that language. This is a call to arms. To my friends in the LGBTQ plus community, the Supreme Court is coming for. Who are they coming for? Does she not know what Roe versus Wade is? You know what? You would think, okay, I get it. She's a far leftist lunatic. I understand. But you would think your job as a leader, as a mayor of a city that's already so dangerous, you would think your job is to say, hey, we're not this is what this, you would think your job would be to try to bring people together, to try to bridge that, to be a leader and to not push fear into people. But this is the new leadership. I'm going to make up stuff and fear monger my people into pushing whatever lunatic agenda I have. How many times do we have to say the overturning of Roe versus Wade only kicks the legality back to the states? It will never not be legal in the US. Ooh, you know what? This is really interesting. I wish I would have brought that video up. Maybe tonight I will try to find this video clip and bring it up. Bill Maher on his show admitted they were talking about the whole Roe versus Wade thing, and he was like, you know what? I have realized, and I think myself too. My mom and I just had this conversation. Whoa! Oh my gosh! I almost spilled coffee everywhere. Bill Maher said, you know, we just haven't really had this discussion a lot recently, and he was like, there was so much about abortion rights and the pro-life individuals that I just didn't know before. And he was like, I feel kind of silly, but it's just something I never really looked into. And he goes, so I learned a few things. He said, number one, I learned that the majority of pro-lifers, the majority of pro-life activists are women. He also said this. He said, I also learned that America, just in general, has some of the most liberal policies on abortion. If you go anywhere in Europe, if you go to Italy, if you go to Spain, he goes, if you go to all these European countries, they have way more restrictions on abortion than we do in the US. And I think that's really interesting. He was absolutely right. And then I told you all yesterday, if you watched, I was having a conversation with my mom, and she said, so we had a family member who got pregnant and had a very high risk pregnancy because this family member was just really sick with an illness. So they were doing they were doing the sonogram really early, and right at 2 months, my mom said you could see the baby's hand and you could see it moving. It was already developed and it was moving, and my mom said, "I never knew that the baby was that developed that early. I just didn't know." And I think that's a lot of us. We just, and I'm using myself, I know better now, but I'm just saying, I think a lot of people just don't know. And they fearmonger about how you're taking away women's rights. The majority of pro life activists are women. But to say that now, so here's where Lori is wrong. First of all, the overturning of Roe versus Wade just kicks it back to the states. The states get to decide, which ultimately, if you think about it, the people decide, because you will be electing officials who make these decisions. The Supreme Court is not elected by the people. So this puts more power back to the people. So when we're speaking about democracy, this is very pro-democracy thing that the Supreme Court is doing. And that's what they stated. So on this draft that was released, they specifically stated, we are doing this on the basis of the Constitution so that the states can decide. And they said this is only about Roe versus Wade. This has nothing to do with any other matter. So that just diminishes her LGBTQ plus community being in fear that they're coming for them next. No one came after anything. This is a pure constitutional issue. And Democrats had all that time in office. They control everything right now to codify abortion into the Constitution if they wanted. They didn't. So, not that I'm saying I think it should be in there. I'm just saying Democrats could have done this. They did not do that. Crazy. And still, people will look past all of this stuff. Imagine if Donald Trump would have said anything remotely close to that. Imagine what would have happened. Okay, so Tim said Roe is a fraud. Who doesn't know that? Yeah, so there's an interesting history about, there's an interesting facts about Roe in Roe versus Wade. She was a 21-year-old woman who was kind of sought out. They sort of wanted to use her for Roe versus Wade. She never actually had an abortion. She ended up having, so she was pregnant with her third child at 21. She had a pretty sketchy past, and the Roe baby was never actually aborted. The Roe baby was given up for adoption and is alive and well today. Lance said, "Did you see DeSantis's bill for victims of communism? The dude is going to drive them absolutely insane," and I love it. Yeah, so Ron DeSantis, I just want to make sure I say it correctly. Just signed a bill. I think it's to make a day of remembrance for victims of communism. I'm looking it up. Today, May 9th, yesterday, Ron DeSantis of Florida signed the Victims of Communism Memorial Day bill into law. This bill designates November 7th as Victims of Communism Memorial Day to honor the more than 100 million people who have died under communist regimes and the 1.5 billion people who still live and labor under communism today. He says, This day not only honors those who have suffered, but it also helps educate American youth who have an understanding of communism and an appreciation for democracy. I think that's very cool. And I think it's very appropriate for Florida to have that. A lot of Floridians come from Cuba. There's a really big Cuban population in Florida. So I think that's really appropriate for them to be one of the first states that I think you should learn about it. Communism is so glorified that that's BLM, Patrice Con Colors. Actually, we were just talking about her. Now I want a Cuban sando. Patrice Con Colors joked about one of her books that she had being mistaken for Mao's Red Book. So this is someone who glorified communism to a bit. And I think that's very cool. One of the things that really stuck out in my head when I was young, and this is what's wrong with all these lefty teachers, is because they're not going to go into these subjects like they used to and tell the truth on these subjects like they used to. I remember in 5th grade, we were learning about different countries and just different governments and how they were run. And we were learning about North Korea one day. And I don't know if they're communist. A lot of people say that they're communist, but I think they might actually be something else. But anyway, it's a very oppressive government, similar to communism in many ways. And we were learning about North Korea, and my teacher was very honest and very clear about how they control their people. And I'm so glad that I learned that lesson. I don't think teachers today go into it the way that they used to. And I think it's important to understand that. You know, teachers today are telling their kids how awful and terrible the United States of America is, and socialist Marxists. But teachers today just tell their kids how awful and terrible America is, and they grow up hating their country when it's in fact the opposite. That's why we have so many migrants who want to come here. And then we just talked about that a little bit too with abortion. We have some of the most liberal abortion laws than probably any country, or most countries, most Western countries. Yet you have people thinking that we're going to go back to the Handmaid's Tale. Biden told Cuban refugees not to come here, real refugees, real political persecution, no radical. Yeah. I know that's what's really upsetting, because you have all of these people coming over our southern border claiming asylum. Most of them don't meet asylum status, but there are people all around the world who would meet asylum status. I would think, yeah, the Cubans are one of them. I think women in the Middle East who are forced to wear things and participate things that they don't want to. Christians at some places, and anywhere where you can't express your religion, or anywhere where you have an oppressive government like in Cuba where you're escaping communism. But those people get cut in line by all of these economic migrants coming over the southern border. And that bothers me. When you say you're pro asylum seekers, but you're letting all of these people through to jump the line of people that actually do have legitimate asylum claims. I think it's like 90% of the people that come over the southern border don't even have legitimate asylum claims. Oh yeah, this is Jen Psaki on whether people should be protesting outside of Supreme Court justices' homes. AP reporter, there's actually a law that prohibits protesting outside of private residences. Psaki, we're certainly not suggesting that anyone breaks the law. So they won't actually come out and condemn people protesting outside of the justices' homes. They'll just sort of beat around the bush. All right, so Biden did a presser. This is actually from yesterday. He went on talking about inflation again today, saying that this was yesterday where he says the bottom line is my top priority is fighting inflation. The only suggestion he gave towards what exactly he is doing to fight inflation, he wanted to put a cap on the price of high-speed internet. I'm not a genius when it comes to the economy, but I could think of about 50 other things that maybe he could do before putting a price cap on the cost of high-speed internet. That was his only suggestion yesterday. Today he was talking about inflation again. Don't think I have that one. Weird that a massive windbag would want to fight inflation. He talked about it again today and almost blamed it on Republicans. U.S. President Joe Biden, under pressure to tame high inflation, sought to assure Americans on Tuesday, that was what he was saying today, that he understands what they are grappling with and that the Federal Reserve is working to resolve the top issues weighing on his administration. With a spike in inflation having pushed annual consumer prices to more than 8% higher, the president highlighted his release of oil from strategic petroleum reserves and pressure on companies to return record high profits to consumers in the form of lower prices. I know that families all across America are hurting because of inflation. I want every American to know that I am taking inflation very seriously and it's my top domestic priority. Meanwhile, this is the Quartering, who is not necessarily a political commentator, but he had a good take on this. The optics of all-time high gas prices and young mothers desperate because they literally can't find baby formula while Joe Biden begs the U.S. taxpayers to send $40 billion to Ukraine is the most Joe Biden thing Joe Biden has ever done. Agreed? Yes, there's a baby formula shortage, if you haven't heard. But it's true. Whatever the inner workings are, the optics of this are the optics of it. And you cannot escape the optics of what is happening right now. Biden said the COVID-19 pandemic, coupled with supply chain issues and Russia's war on Ukraine, are to blame for the inflation spike, but that the Fed should and will do its part to control it. The U.S. Central Bank raised interest rates by 0.5 percentage point last week and is expected to roll out additional hikes this year. The president did not announce new policy measures in his speech, which occurred a day before the consumer price data is expected to show inflation remained elevated through April. Biden also sharpened his attacks on Republicans. 6 months before November 8th, congressional elections where Democrats are hoping to regain the control of the Senate and the House of Representatives. The Republican plan is to increase taxes on middle-class families. When have Republicans ever wanted to increase taxes? Can somebody tell me? So I guess this is the new angle. We're going to blame it on Republicans. Keep in mind that he said that because here's a video. This video should be played on loop over and over and over and over and over again before the midterms. Joe Biden had just a little moment of honesty.
Americans believe that your administration is not doing enough to combat inflation. And do you believe that you and your administration bear some measure of responsibility for the inflation that we're seeing across the country?
First is we're in power. That's the first thing. And you justifiably right, we control all three branches of the government.
Let's play that again.
Believe so many Americans believe that your administration is not doing enough to combat inflation. And do you believe that you and your administration bear some measure of responsibility for the inflation that we're seeing across the country?
First is we're in power. That's the first thing. And you justifiably right, we control all three branches of the government.
So he just said it. First of all, we're in power. You're right. We're in control of all the government. They're in control of everything right now. The three branches of government, they're in control. Just play that over and over and over again. So anytime he brought up ultra MAGA again today, which I thought was rather funny. So here it is, Biden. Republicans don't want to solve inflation by lowering your costs. They want to solve it by raising your taxes and lowering your income. When has that ever been a Republican talking point or a Republican stance? And I don't believe he has a plan to fight inflation. I don't believe anything he says. That's why he hasn't really laid out a plan to fight inflation. How do I upgrade to Ultra MAGA? I only have basic MAGA. New merch opportunity. Jen Psaki confirmed. As he noted today, Biden is the president. We do control all forms of branches of the government. That's not something I would be saying over and over and over again at this moment. And, you know, they really thought that the Roe versus Wade was going to help the Democrats. I don't think so. I don't think it's going to help. And I don't think blaming Republicans or blaming Putin when you just admitted that you're in control of all branches of the government, I don't think that's going to help. I don't think not having a plan and just blaming everyone else is going to help. Anyway, thank you guys for joining. I'm going to get off now. I'm ahead on the Mega MAGA. I'm going to be live again at 8 p.m. Central tonight. So be there or be squared. I'll try to have it more fun. I think I'll find a bunch of like crazy leftist video. Try to be a little bit more fun. All right. Thank you, everyone. Y'all have a really good afternoon. I'll see some of you hopefully later tonight. Later. Bye.